The LA Kings played 3 solid periods, but is seeing believing? We talk about that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and we are on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. You can start your season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Coming up, we've got an injury update on an LA Kings standout that was hurt in last night's game against Nashville. We'll also preview tonight's big game between the Kings and the Minnesota Wild. But first, the LA Kings played game 13 of the NHL season in Nashville against the Predators. It was the first of back-to-back road games for the LA Kings and the first of 3 meetings between the Kings and Nashville Predators this season. LA was coming off a disappointing 4-3 shootout loss at home in their last game against the Blackhawks. As for the Kings lineup in this one, we would have the same forward group that we saw in the previous game against Chicago and the same forward group we've seen for the last few games. Top line centered by Anze Kopitar with Adrian Kempe and Alex Turcotte. Second line centered by Phillip Danault with Trevor Moore and Kevin Fiala. Third line centered by Quentin Byfield with Alex Laferriere and Warren Foegele. And the fourth line centered by Trevor Lewis with Tanner Jeannot and Akil Thomas. The defensive setup would be a little bit different. Mikey Anderson would be on the top pairing on the left side, but he'd be joined by Jordan Spence, who was promoted from the third line. Joel Edmondson and Brandt Clarke would still be the tandem on the second line, with Vladislav Gavrikov moving off the top pairing back to the left side on the third pairing, and he'd be teamed up with Kyle Burroughs. And a little bit of an interesting move there, Gavrikov being on the third pairing for the first time this year, and you had to wonder, was he being demoted because of the goal that was allowed late in regulation against Chicago that allowed it to go eventually into the shootout? He was the player that was in front of the crease, allowed that pass to get through him, and had the game-tying goal scored at the back door. The goalie would be Darcy Kuemper, with David Riddick serving as the backup. Interesting decision for head coach Jim Hiller to go with Darcy Kuemper in this one. Usually the general thinking is when you have back-to-back games, you start your number one goalie against the greater of the two opponents, and there's no question that, at least right now, the Nashville Predators were the lesser of the two teams the Kings are playing on back-to-back nights. But there's also, I guess, a train of thought of you start your number one goalie against the lesser team, you bank the 2 points, and then you're playing with house money against the other team. At least that's the philosophy. I would have gone with Riddick against Nashville and kept Darcy Kuemper for Minnesota, but Jim Hiller decided to go the other way. The healthy scratches for the Kings were Andre Lee, Andreas Englund, and Caleb Jones. So my big question going into the game against Nashville is which Kings team was going to show up? The team that lost to the Sharks and Blackhawks, or the team that handled the Golden Knights? As for the game summary in this one, the Kings played a solid first period and would grab a 1-0 lead on Anze Kopitar's 5th goal of the season. Brandt Clarke and Adrian Kempe with the assists. Second period was okay for the Kings, but they didn't score, but neither did the Predators. So the Kings were leading into the third period, just like they were in their last game against Chicago, which they ended up losing in a shootout. But this time, the Kings did not let Nashville back into the game. Kevin Fiala would score his 6th goal of the season early in the third period. Phillip Danault and Trevor Moore with the assists. That made it 2-0. The Kings would then seal the victory with an empty net goal, Adrian Kempe's 5th of the season, with Trevor Lewis and Vladislav Gavrikov providing the assist. The Kings win 3-0, improving to 7-3-3 on the season for 17 points. Currently tied for 4th most points in the NHL, and tied with the Vegas Golden Knights in points at 17 apiece atop the Pacific Division. However, Vegas would have the tiebreaker against the Kings right now because they had one more win in regulation and also played one fewer game. But still, For all of the complaining and the hand wringing and the wondering about the LA Kings, 7-3-3 after 13 games. I'll take it. I'll say that. As for the game stats in this one against Nashville, again, Kings win at 3-0. Shots on goal favored LA 27-16. Power plays, good and bad for the special teams for the Kings. On the good side, they shut down a very good Nashville power play, which went 0 for 3. On the bad side, the Kings were 0 for 4 with the man advantage. Faceoffs favored the Kings 30-25. Hits favored Nashville 21-12. Block shots slightly favored the Predators 14-12. So my big takeaway from this game, well, I won't say it was the Kings' best game of the season. I think that was the win over Vegas because of the circumstances, coming off a really bad loss to San Jose and bouncing back with a big win over a big team. But I would say that this win over Nashville, probably the Kings' most complete game of the year, with 3 solid periods. The quote of the game comes from goalie Darcy Kemper, who recorded the shutout, and he kind of echoed my thoughts on this, saying, quote, that's a team shutout right there. We played such a complete game tonight. That's a big physical team on the other end, and we answered, if not dictated, every step of the way. That was just great to see us have that long travel yesterday and come out with an effort like this. End quote. That was Kings goaltender Darcy Kemper. So what was good for the LA Kings from a team standpoint? We'll get into the individuals in just a bit. Definitely want to start with the penalty kill. The Predators came in with the 11th ranked power play in the NHL, and it had been getting hot lately as well. And they had multiple opportunities to get back into this game with the man advantage. The Kings penalty kill, though, would not allow that to happen. Joel Edmondson takes a cross-checking penalty in the opening period. Kings kill off the power play easily. Not only did the Predators not get a shot on goal, they never got the power play set up. Then Kyle Burroughs was called for a kneeing penalty in the second period. Again, Nashville gets no shots on goal in that power play. And then later it was Vladislav Gavrikov in the third period taking a bad cross-checking penalty. Once again, a chance for Nashville to get back in the game. Once again, no shots on goal. Now, the power play only lasted about a minute for Nashville because they would end up taking a penalty of their own, nullifying the remaining 1 minute left with a man advantage. They skated 4-on-4, and then the Kings had a minute of power play time. But a great job by the Kings penalty killers in this game. Forwards Trevor Moore, Philip Deneau, Adrian Kempe, Andrei Kopitar, Trevor Lewis, Quentin Byfield, and Warren Fogle. And defensemen Vladislav Gavrikov, Mikey Anderson, Jordan Spence, Kyle Burroughs, and Joel Edmondson. The PK was outstanding for the LA Kings. They won most of the faceoffs. They cleared the pucks every time they had a chance to do so. Again, obviously no shots against on 5 minutes of power play time. Fantastic. Great job. The Kings PK getting it done. As a matter of fact, they're starting to really roll of late, having killed off 14 of the last 15 power plays against. I mentioned 3 solid periods, so great to see the Kings close it out as well with a strong third period, especially coming off the last game against Chicago. They obviously never gave up the lead in this one, never giving up a goal. Kings did a solid job not allowing Nashville many chances from the high danger areas and didn't allow many odd man rushes. There obviously were a couple of breakdowns here and there, but Darcy Kemper was there to make up for any mistakes, which were few. When the Kings did make a mistake, they also made some pretty good defensive plays to make up for any mistakes that they had. And I thought the Kings did their best job all season of getting sticks into passing lanes. They did a really good job intercepting passes and not letting passes get through. What was not so good for the Kings from a team standpoint, really just one thing, the power play, still not producing. I thought the Kings did have some decent looks. I thought the puck movement was pretty good. I think the power play is looking a little better. We're looking for anything right now. But again, the production is not there. Hopefully this puck movement, some of the things we're seeing, getting a better flow, hopefully it'll result in some goals at least. And Jim Fox said this on the broadcasting. He's right. Sometimes the power play can be something that takes away from your team. Sometimes it takes away from your momentum. If you can't get anything going, if you can't get it set up, if it's a frustrating aspect of your game. That hasn't been the case the last few games of the Kings. They've gotten it set up. They've had good puck movement in the zone. They've gotten a couple of decent looks. So at least from that standpoint, it seems like the Kings power play is getting a little better. But again, the production just is not there. Coming up, we will have an injury update on a standout Kings player. We'll do that and more here next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit and get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And of course, FanDuel is there for you to bet on the NFL, college football, the NBA, and of course, the NHL. Our LA Kings are back in action tonight. Underdogs once again for a second night in a row. In Minnesota, the Kings are getting a goal and a half. The over-under for the game against the Wild is at 6.5. Join FanDuel. Browse the latest betting odds of your favorite sports and teams on the Sportsbook app and get in on the action. You get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, it's time to look at some of the individuals from last night's win over the Nashville Predators. And let's start in net with Darcy Kuemper. Talked about the interesting decision by Jim Hiller to go with Kuemper against the Predators. Now, he only had to make 16 saves to post his first shutout of the season, actually his 32nd career shutout and fourth shutout as a member of the LA Kings. Of course, he had 3 shutouts in his first stint in LA several seasons ago, but his first shutout this year as an LA King. And sometimes it's not about the quantity of saves that you make, but the quality of saves. And Darcy Kuemper did have some above average saves. Once again, had a save on a 2-on-1 for Nashville in the opening period. Also made a nice save in the final seconds of the opening period as well. But his best save of the game was in the second period when he absolutely robbed Nashville's Colton Sissons, who made a nice backhand move, but Kuemper was there with the pad save. A great save from Darcy Kuemper. And he continues to play better than I expected. So thought he played a great game, thought he was deserving of the shutout. You heard his words earlier, though. He said it was a team shutout, and he's definitely right about that. He got a lot of help as well. The Kings really did not allow Nashville to get a lot of very good opportunities. He also did get an assist, I should point out, from teammate Philip Deneau, who took the puck off the goal line in the first period when a puck had trickled behind Kuemper and was heading over the goal line. So credit Philip Deneau for saving a goal as well. But Darcy Kuemper now on the season is 4-0-3. All 7 starts for Darcy Kuemper, the Kings have at least gotten a point out of it. So not bad for Darcy Kuemper. Not sure what your expectations were of him coming into this season. I thought he would be solid. I thought he could be just as good as Cam Talbot. I would say so far, honestly, he's been even better. And that's saying something. And Talbot was an all-star in the first half of the season last year. But Kuemper is making high-quality saves so far this year. Got to talk about the captain, Anze Kopitar. Had a goal and didn't get an assist on the empty net goal, but he really made the key play that allowed the Kings to get that empty net goal and ice the victory. But for his first goal, Brandt Clarke puts a shot on goal. Kopitar's there for the rebound. Now, the first putback attempt was saved, but he got the puck behind the net and smartly shot the puck off the body. I think it was off the pads or the feet of goaltender UC Saros for Nashville. That is a veteran move. Just a reminder of the high hockey IQ that Anze Kopitar, the future Hall of Famer, has. That's a veteran move, just banking it off of the goalie when he knows he's out of position. Awesome goal by Anze Kopitar to get the Kings going. Now, because of the shutout, that opening goal actually ended up being the game-winning goal for the LA Kings, and that was Anze Kopitar's 74th career game-winning goal, and that now makes Anze Kopitar the LA Kings all-time franchise leader in game-winning goals. He had been tied with Luc Robitaille with 73, and now put another all-time record for the LA Kings in the column of Anze Kopitar, in my opinion, the greatest LA King of all time, and he's still getting it done. On the empty net goal, I did want to point out, Kopitar gets the puck on his stick. He has some room in his own end, but a lot of times these days we see as soon as a player gets the puck when there's an empty net and he's got any room at all, he'll just fire it for the net every time. Kopitar didn't do that. He looked around to see if there was a better option. He passes it over to Vladislav Gavrikov. He passes it ahead to Trevor Lewis. He taps it over to Adrian Kempe. Boom, easy empty net goal in a wide open net. Now, he could have shot it. Maybe he even scores on that, but it would have been a much lower percentage chance of him scoring. By making that extra pass, it ends up being a tap-in goal, and they ice it. So another great game by the captain, Anze Kopitar, scoring the first goal and then really making that empty net goal happen as well. Did want to point out Kevin Fiala. He had a goal, made a very nice pass in the middle of the ice to Philip Deneau after a Nashville turnover. Deneau put the shot on goal. Save was made, but there was Fiala right there to put in the rebound and make it 2-0 early in the third period. That was a key goal for the Kings to get a little bit of breathing room to start that period and take a little momentum away from Nashville as far as them trying to make a push to start the third period. It seems pretty clear that after the benching and the suspension that Kevin Fiala has taken his game up as expected by me anyway. This is the Kevin Fiala that I had expected to see earlier this year and frankly for most of the year. 3 games since he was benched, he now has 2 goals and 3 assists, and he has taken no penalties over the last 3 games, which is why he got benched in the first place, because he was taking those dumb penalties. So he has also played much better. He is more active. He's more of a positive on the ice than he had been for the first handful of games. So it appears Kevin Fiala has gotten the message from Jim Hiller, probably also gotten the message to himself, right, that he needs to be better, and I think he definitely has been over the last few games. Quinton Byfield and Trevor Moore, we're still looking for them to get their first goals of the season. I thought both of them, though, did play well in this game. I know people want more results and more stats and numbers, and I get that. Moore was especially good on the penalty kill, doing things to help the Kings win. He did have an assist, also had a team-high 4 shots on goal, so it's good that he is looking for his shot. No points for Q, but he had a couple of quality scoring chances, had a great scoring chance in the high slot in the first period, but credit Nashville with a block shot. Third period, he had a very nice pass ahead to Alex Laferriere, breaking him down the ice. Ended up being a 2-on-1 with Laffy and Q. Laferriere had a great chance to pass it back to Byfield, and I was screaming at my TV, give it back to him, because I want to see Byfield get that goal and get him going. Laferriere waited a little bit too long to try and get it back to him. But once he tried to make the pass, he ended up getting hooked. So he did draw a penalty, and the Kings did go on the power play. But that would have been a great chance for Quinton Byfield to get his first goal. And I'm hoping that Q and Moore will be like those old ketchup bottles. I know they got the squeeze bottles now, but back in the day, you had these old glass ketchup bottles. And when they were like half full, you had to bang on them to get some ketchup to come out, right? To put on your burger or your fries. And it would take a while sometimes, but once it started flowing, the ketchup started flowing, right? Well, hopefully for Byfield and Moore, once they finally get that ketchup to flow, get that first goal, hopefully more goals will come in bunches. But again, still waiting for Quinton Byfield and Trevor Moore to get that first goal of the season. Only thing that was bad for the LA Kings in the win over Nashville, other than the power play, but young forward Alex Turcotte took a hard hit into the boards late in the second period. Looks like his head went kind of into the dasher boards. He was shaken up, went off the ice under his own power. He sat on the bench for the remainder of the second period, did not go back to the locker room. But after the intermission, he did not come out and play in the third period. Afterwards, Jared Shafran, who does a great job with the Ontario Reign, also does some work for the LA Kings, posted on social media a quote from Jim Hiller. He said, quote, Hiller did not have any specific update on Turcotte's status after the game, saying, quote, I don't have anything specific other than I talked to him. He's going to be all right. I'm not sure when he's going to be able to get back in, but he's fine, end quote. So obviously not much specifics there from Jim Hiller. Obviously I still would take that as a positive update. Maybe Alex Turcotte day to day, maybe he doesn't play against Minnesota. I would think he wouldn't play against Minnesota tonight. We'll probably see Andre Lee back in the lineup. Maybe Akil Thomas moves up in the lineup. So I would think with Turcotte out, we could definitely see some changes there. I think it was Warren Fogle took his place on the second power play unit after he didn't come back out. But again, Alex Turcotte, if you followed him at all, he has an issue with history with injuries, specifically some concussions. So anytime he hits his head like that, you hold your breath and you hope he's going to be okay, especially this season. Having a breakout season as far as just the way he's played, really been a positive factor for the Kings. But again, it looks like from what Jim Miller had to say that Alex Turcotte's going to be okay. May miss a couple of games, but it's nothing serious. There's no concussion issues. So obviously that is good news. Up next, we give out our 3 stars of the game for the win over Nashville, and we will preview tonight's big game between the Kings and the Minnesota Wild. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Just go to PrizePicks app, make your picks right now, and you could be a winner. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on sports action in most states, including California. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, the Kings are back in action tonight as they play the second of back-to-back road games as they face the Minnesota Wild. But before we get into that, I do want to give out our 3 stars of the game for the big win over the Nashville Predators. And the number 3 star, the LA Kings, I'm going with Darcy Kemper. I know he got the shutout, and he did make some quality saves, but he didn't see a ton of action, just 16 saves. But still, want to reward your goaltender for getting the job done, not allowing any goals. So Darcy Kemper is my number 3 star. Kevin Fiala gets my number 2 star. Really, he really played a solid game all the way around, had a goal, a big goal, the second goal. There was one mistake he made and a turnover that led to a 2-on-1, but there was one time shorthanded, or rather the Kings, were on a power play, and he really hustled back to prevent a scoring opportunity. So for the most part, a lot of positive in Kevin Fiala. Again, stayed out of the box, had a big goal. So Kevin Fiala is my number 2 star, but the number 1 star is the captain, Anze Kopitar, scoring that big goal to get the Kings off to a good start, and then having a key play on the empty net goal as well, and becoming the Kings' all-time leader in game-winning goals in the history of the franchise. Anze Kopitar, my number 1 star in the win over the Nashville Predators. So again, the Kings are back in action tonight. A marquee matchup, actually, in the NHL tonight. The Kings check in, I mentioned earlier, 7-3-3. That's tied for first place in the Pacific Division, technically kind of second place. But 4th in the Western Conference are the LA Kings, and 7th in the NHL with those 17 points in 13 games. You might not know it, but the Minnesota Wild are one of the bigger surprises so far this season in the NHL. They were a team that was thought of as being a bubble playoff team, but so far, an excellent 8-1-2 record and 18 points in 11 games for the Minnesota Wild. That was not expected. They are 2nd in the Central Division, 2nd in the Western Conference, and 3rd in the entire NHL as far as points with 18. So Minnesota is having a great start to the season. Anze Kopitar leading the Kings with 14 points. Alex Turcotte, the leading goal scorer, with 8. Adrian Kempe and defenseman Brant Clark also each have 12 points. For the Minnesota Wild, if you follow the NHL at all, familiar name, their leading scorer is Kirill Kaprizov, 7 goals and 21 points on the season, and that is tied for the NHL lead in scoring with Florida's Sam Reinhart. Kirill Kaprizov with 10 goals in 17 games in his career against the Kings, so he's enjoyed playing against LA in the past. You also got Matt Boldy checking in with 6 goals and 13 points, but Kirill Kaprizov, big target on him tonight for the LA Kings. They will have to contain one of the top scorers in the NHL. So the Kings went with Darcy Kemper last night. That means that obviously they're going to go with number 2 goalie David Rittich tonight. He checks in with a record this season of 3-3 an 870 save percentage, and a 3.09 goals against average. Minnesota is expected to go with their number one goalie, Philip Gustafsson. He has a great record and stats so far this season, 6-1-1 in 8 starts. His save percentage is .924, which is fantastic. Goals against average of 2.12. So the Kings obviously going to need to get in front of the net, get some screens, get some deflections to try and beat Philip Gustafsson, the goaltender for the Minnesota Wild. Checking the numbers for tonight's matchup, Kings check in with 13th right now in the league in scoring goals per game at 3.23. Minnesota is 8th in the league, scoring 3.73 goals per game. Kings are now 8th in the NHL in allowing goals per game at just 3 goals per game. The Minnesota Wild are 4th in the league at 2.46. Kings power play is 24th in the league, 15.2%. Minnesota's 11th in the NHL. Their power play is 22.2%. Kings are 18th in the NHL in the penalty kill at 78.4%, but rising. The Wild are 30th in the NHL on the penalty kill at 65.2%. So that is by far the worst stat for the Minnesota Wild. Now, I said on Monday, I'm not exactly sure who the Kings are at this point. So I mentioned earlier, is seeing believing in the LA Kings. They just played a great 3 periods in the game in Nashville. Do we now believe that the LA Kings are getting things on the right path? I'm going to echo what I said before the game against Nashville. I still don't know on a night-to-night basis what we're going to get from the LA Kings. So I'm still saying I don't know exactly what this team is, but mentioned it earlier, 7-3-3 on the season. No complaining about that. I mean, really can't. I mean, like I said, 7-3-3 after 13 games. We would definitely absolutely take that. So big game tonight for the LA Kings. We will, if you're going to watch the game locally, it will be on the FanDuel Sports Network. If you're going to listen to the game, it is on the ESPN 710 app. Nationally, it is apparently going to be on ESPN Plus as well. With Josh Schaefer on the call in for Nick Nixon. We'll probably talk more about Josh sometime this week, but he's in for Nick Nixon. Some people have asked me, is everything okay with Nick? Is he sick or anything like that? Haven't heard any reports. I'm guessing maybe because it's a real quick back-to-back, just 2-day trip on the road. Maybe Nick decided, if I don't have to, I don't want to take that. Let Josh get some experience and call the game. So as far as I know, Nick Nixon is fine, but Josh Schaefer on the play-by-play for the Kings last night in Nashville and again tonight against the Minnesota Wild. For you everydayers, those of you that listen to watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on tomorrow's show, obviously we'll recap the big game between the Kings and the Wild. Thursday, we'll have a preview of the Kings-Canucks matchup and maybe have a special guest. And then on Friday, we'll recap the Kings-Canucks game and have our weekly Kings fan feedback show. The email address to get in on that is lockedoneddie@gmail.com. You can also post your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section. We always appreciate that. We also love you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. So looking forward to a big game tonight, the Kings against the Wild, and we'll be talking about it on tomorrow's show. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.